Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching my presentation. I hope you enjoy it. My name is Peter Shea, and the subject that I chose for our Contemporary Beliefs project was raising young children in marriage. That I have 4 kids of my own from the age of 4 to 12, so this is a project that really hits close to home for me. And in this study, I interviewed couples, multiple families. I checked out some websites and news sources. I observed some families in public, and I even watched a couple of sitcoms to gather my information. So I'm going to start with the findings that I gathered from the interviews that I did. And for these interviews, I got together with married couples who either have young children or at one point had young children. And based off of the interviews that I did, there were some general consensus that raising young children in marriage is difficult, exhausting, exciting, and also wonderful, all at the same time. It was also, the general consensus was that it's important for kids to have parents that are married. For instance, they believe that married parents potentially offer children a stability of both structure and nurture. That not just that their parents are committed to each other, but also to them. They found that the hardest thing about marriage while raising young children is staying connected. That throughout the entire interview process, the issue that kept coming up was the difficulty of trying to stay connected with their spouse, that the focus shifts from the marriage to parenthood, and it's important to stay closely connected with your spouse. And they strongly believe that marriage should be the first priority rather than the kids, and that the married couple should be intentional about making their relationship work. And it's all about, properly communicating and receiving those emotional bids that Dr. Gottman talked about in his book. They did feel like the best part about marriage while having young kids is the feeling that you get as a couple when you are in agreement, and there's that sense of, yes, this is what we both want in the same way and at the same time. And that's an incredible thing. But the hardest part about raising children when you are married is the differing parenting styles. And that comes back to the spouse's emotional heritage and communication styles and expectations. Just like we read in chapter 9 of Emotional Intelligence, is that there are 2 emotional realities in a couple, his and hers. And that goes for both marriage and parenting styles. And they believe that the best part about raising children was when the children start to get older, they're growing, and they're making good decisions based off of the teaching of both parents. And another one of the questions I had asked is, what is the perfect number of kids to have? And while some people gave me a specific number, like ranging from 3 to 8, my favorite response was from a gal who said, her answer was, as many as will not break you, enough that you can safely fulfill God's mandate to procreate and not go insane without sacrificing your sanity or your marriage. I thought that was just kind of fun. The next thing I did was I went online and I did a Google search for raising young children in marriage. And I checked out the first 2 search results and also a news site. And it was interesting that the first 2 search results were, the first one was titled Happy Parents, Happy Kids. The second search result was titled Have Children? Here's How Kids Ruin Romantic Relationships. So that was a lot of fun. But throughout all of these articles, those 2 and the news source, there was a few consistent messages. So they all reiterated that marriages change when children are introduced to the family. They talked about marriages, they often suffer when raising young children, that the intimacy declines, that having a happy marriage leads to happier kids. But their main focus on how to make a happy marriage was on time management, was on spending time together, that it didn't really mention people's communication styles or how to manage conflicts or sharing empathy with each other, that they didn't really talk about how to be a happy couple. They just said, spend time together and you will be happy. I also observed a few families in public. That my wife and I stayed a night at a local hotel that had a public indoor pool, and I used that opportunity to observe 3 families that were there at the same time, as conspicuously as possible. And what I noticed was that there was little to no interaction between couples, and that the interaction that they did have with each other was short. And they usually talked with like a quiet intensity. But when they were talking with their kids, it was either a quiet intensity or a volume that was just under a yell. And it seemed like the parents were distracted even when they were with the children, that there was one father who was in his full bathing suit but never got in the water. He just walked around following his son and completely involved in his phone. And I kind of imagine that's how Cody Tull would have been, which was kind of interesting. But none of the adults seemed like they were having fun. And for the most part, there were very few smiles and no playful joking, either with the kids or even between spouses. And the last source that I did was some television, a recent sitcom called Modern Family. And I'd never seen any of the episodes, and judging from just the first couple of episodes, there were a few things that I observed. First, with the fathers were portrayed as somewhat inept and clueless. Even though he did show love, he was still just like he didn't know what he was doing, either with his kids or with his wife. And that the mothers were portrayed as kind of crazy and overbearing, usually portrayed as overprotective. And again, it was made clear that they were overprotective in a loving way, that they weren't trying to control the kids, but to protect them. And finally, the young children seemed to be only slightly influenced by their parents. They didn't seem to view, they had little regard for their parents' feelings and showed little respect, and actually found the parents to be more annoying and frustrating. And just for fun, I also went back and watched an older sitcom, The Brady Bunch, and the differences between the two shows was pretty amazing. That the father in the Brady Bunch was portrayed as being very capable, and he was able to handle situations with wisdom, and he also showed love. The mother was portrayed as composed, both concerned about both the kids and the husband, but communicating rather than overreacting, and she also showed love. And most surprising was that the young children seemed to be highly influenced by their parents and showing respect. And this is the part that was really surprising to me, was how much they were concerned about their parents' emotional state. You know, that they were upset, that when the parents were upset, that the children were making decisions that they believed would make their parents happy. And they did it with a good attitude. And so, to summarize, if this was all the evidence I had on my chosen topic, I would say the primary beliefs about this issue in contemporary culture are the relationship in the marriage changes. Generally, it is agreed that the marriage relationship itself becomes much more difficult with competing time and energy commitments. Second is that communication is critical, not only about parenting, but also as a couple. Next is that the marriage needs to be the top priority. That from the articles that I read to the people that I spoke with, it seems like having a healthy marriage will increase the happiness of the child as well as increase the effectiveness of parents. And some of my personal observations is the difference between media versus real people, that there are some aspects that they agree on, such as time together and trying to communicate, but the media misses some key aspects. It's not just about time together or communicating that are important. It's also how you communicate. It's the quality of the communication. It's empathy. It's having a shared foundation and shared worldview with shared goals. And finally, things are changing. When I look at the newer sitcom versus the older sitcom, it's very clear that there's been a shift in culture. And that's something that I believe we all need to keep in mind as we move forward. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope you have an awesome day. Thanks for watching.